Hello everyone, good afternoon. I hope everyone is doing well. So, today I'll be talking about building native mobile apps. So, before I go into the talk, let me introduce myself so that you guys get in context on what I do. So, I'm Sagar. I work at InMobi as a software engineer. As a day-to-day activity at my workplace, I usually work on React, Node, and GraphQL. So, I don't work on mobile development on full time. So, but I always had curious to know about how the React natives are developed, and I also wanted to build one. So, a couple of weeks back, so since we all were in lockdown, a couple of weeks back, I thought I want to give it a try. So, I built a mobile app and then published it on Android Play Store. So, today I'll be sharing about how was a developer experience to work on a React Native from a web developer perspective, and how to get started with React Native. So in today's talk, I'll be sharing some approaches to build a native app, and we'll see some of the similarities and differences between React and React Native. And I hope that by end of this talk, you guys get some enough confidence to start building on the React Native. If you are someone who has not built a React Native mobile app, you can start with it by just going through this talk. So to build a mobile app, so what are the libraries of framework which we can pick? To build a iOS app, we need to pick Swift or Objective-C programming languages. So with these two programming languages, you can build only app for iOS. And if you want to build an app for Android, you need to pick Java and Kotlin. So these two are the languages provided by Android. So React Native, Xamarin, and Flutter. So these are cross-platform libraries. That is, you can use a one code base to write the uh, application for both Android platform as well as iOS. I'll be talking about more about React Native in my further slides. So Flutter is Google's UI toolkit to build native user interfaces. It makes use of Dart programming languages, and Xamarin is based on .NET and C Sharp. So why React Native is the best library for a web developers to start with? Firstly, it makes use of JavaScript. So as a web developer, most of the web developers would be aware how the JavaScript works because they would have definitely worked with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And also, a web developer don't have to learn a new programming language just to start with a mobile development. And with the help of React Native, I can build an app which is completely native. That means the output of a React Native app will be same as what we build with the help of Java or Objective C. And also the some of the concepts around React Native are similar to what we have in the React components, what we use for web development. So it's easy for a web developer to grasp those components and start with it. And also learn once and write anywhere is the tagline from React Native website. So what they mean is you can write one code base that can be used for multiple platforms. So the React Native code along with Expo or just with the React Native, I can build an app for Android, iOS. I can run it on my web, and also I can build a desktop application with with the same code base. And React Native is popular. Some of the big popular companies like Facebook, Instagram, they also use React Native in their applications. So let's look at some of the similarities. So if you have worked with React.js, you know how the functional components work. You would have built class-based components. You would have worked with hooks. So these are similar in React Native as well. The way how they work, the APIs, how they're supposed to work, the context APIs, everything remains the same. And also you can continue with the editor which you are working on React.js. You don't require any IDE to start with React Native. You can use the same prettier rules which you are following for web development. It's everything going to be remain same. So before I go with the differences, let's see how to set up a React Native app and Expo on our developer environment. So to start with React Native, uh, you can just say npx React Native init awesome project. So this will install all the necessary packages to start the React application. And when you execute npx create native run iOS, so it's going to start the application on an iOS simulator. And if you say run -Android, it's going to start the application on an Android simulator. But this to run the app iOS on Android simulator, you need to install Xcode or you need to install Android Studio SDK. And setting up React Native on a simulator would take a long time. So it would consume at least about 2 hours because downloading Xcode would definitely take a long time. So there's a one more SDK named as Expo. This is very popular in React Native development. So the setting up React app with Expo and on a physical device is very easy. It just takes about 15 minutes. You can just install this package Expo CLI globally, and then it just execute Expo in it. Awesome project. So this will create an boilerplate for a project, and you can just start with the coding. So my suggestion is you can just start with the Expo and you can run it on your physical device. Simulator, Android simulator or iOS simulator is not required here. So let's see the differences on how we create an component. So for example, on web, if you want to create a simple app component, you would import React from React package. You would create a function app, and you're going to return some JSX, a div, an image, and a paragraph within that. And you'll be exporting the app component. But on React Native, you'll be importing React, and along with you need to import necessary components that we get from the React Native uh, package. And to return, you need to return view, image, and text. So on web, we have a div, but that is view is something similar how the div works. And image component is something similar how the IMG element works on web. And text is similar to how the paragraph works on the web. So how does this work? To render an image on an Android device, we need to make use of native image view Android SDK to get an image. And to get an image on iOS, we need to make use of UI image view from iOS UI toolkit. But when we use image in our code, what React Native does, it takes the image component based on the targeted environment where it's supposed to run. It's going to bind the image to that particular API. So for example, when it is running on the Android, the image is converted to bind to image view, and that's how an image is rendered on an Android device natively. And similarly, when image is targeted for an iOS device, so image component is binded to UI image view, and image will be rendered in a native view on iOS device. So handling touches. So on web, we have event listeners like on click, on change, and we can use that pretty much on any kind of tags. Like on div, you can have an on click event handler. Even on paragraph or an image, also you can have an on click handler. But that's not the case in React Native. So let's say I'm using a view component here, and I'm passing an on press prop here and trying to console log when the user taps on this particular view. But this is going to throw error. We cannot have on press. We cannot pass on press prop to any of the components. So on press prop can be passed only to the touchable components. So by the touchable components, there are something like touchable opacity, touchable highlight, touchable without feedback. So we can import touchable opacity from React Native, and we need to wrap the entire view with the touchable opacity. And for touchable opacity, you can have on-press event handler. So this is one of the difference between the web and how the React Native works. We need to make sure is this prop is supported by that component. Only then we can move ahead. Let's see about how the stylings are done. At an eye level, the stylings follow the similar pattern on how we do for the web. We need to import style sheet from React Native, and all the stylings are done in line. We don't create any class names, classes to add the styles. So let's say I have a view component here, and if I want to add some background color to it, I would just pass a style prop to it. And with the help of style sheet, I would create an object, naming it container, and I'm using the CSS prop that is background color, and I'm saying the background color should be teal. And this style sheet object name that is the container, I'll be just using it in my view tab component, and the background of this view will be set to teal background. So let's say if you want to have multiple styles on a single component, you can just pass them as an array, like first style, handy styles dot a second style, and that can be wrapped in an array, and you can apply the styling in this way. And in React Native, there are few special properties. So let's say if you want to have an padding left, padding right, if you need to get some margin top and margin bottom, you can, this approach also definitely work, but there are some special properties where you can club the padding left and padding right, and you can name them as padding horizontal, and you can club the top and bottom, and you can just make it margin vertical. So here the output of this and the approach one both going to be remain the same. And if you're work with style components on web, and if you're familiar with it, and if you want to like to use it in React Native also, yes, React Native provides a style components package as well. So on the web, you would import style from style components, and this would be the way you'd be using it. But in the on React Native, so you'll be just saying styled view, and you can apply your background color there. And Playground. So on web, you might have used tools like CodePen or Code Sandbox, where you want to play around with something, want to prototype something very quickly. You don't have to install any packages or something. If you want to uh, quickly dive into coding and do something, you can make use of CodePen or Code Sandbox. Similarly, on React Native, we have a tool called as Snack, built by Expo. So where this provides a user interface, something similar to Code Sandbox, and works similar to how the Code Sandbox works. You can install packages, you can do something, and you can get the output, you'll get the output of how it would look on an Android device, or an output on an iOS or a web device, just right to the screen. Okay, so let's see how the debugging is done on React Native apps. Okay, so this is my mobile screen. So I'll be showing how to debug a React Native app in my developer environment. To run the app locally on my physical device, we need to install this app called as Expo, which we get from Play Store. So when you do that and you get this user interface, in your terminal, you need to say where your project is installed. You need to say Expo start. So when you execute this Expo start command, it's going to start the Expo server, and you get a kind of a QR code, something similar to this. And this window will be open by default. And you can see a QR code here, and this makes so what React Native does is it makes use of React Metro bundler from a proprietary bundler from Facebook. So that's the one which is going to take our code and bundle it and give us the JavaScript output. So we get the QR code here. We need to scan them from our device. So I'll say scan QR code, and I'll be scanning this QR code. So yeah, once you scan the code, your app will start working. So let's say if I want to debug any of these things, so this is the Outshots, the recent tab which I developed and published it on Play Store. So to debug this application, I need to, so to get, just like how we have developer tools on Google Chrome or any other browsers, we get developer tools within the Expo SDK itself. So to open the developer tools, I just need to shake my phone. I get these options. So at the bottom, I can see that, okay, show the inspector, and I can tap on this elements. So it will just give me, and on the top you can see this, what's the height, what's the margin top, what's the padding I've given to this particular component. And I can click on image, I can see what's the height and width I've given for this particular image. And yeah, similarly, you get this CSS box model where you can, something similar on how you get on web, where you can get an idea what's the padding and margin. And also on the left hand side, you can see all the CSS properties which I've applied for that component. So this comes under inspect tab. So let's say within an app, there'll be so many touchable components. Like, I mean, which all components you can tap on the UI. So for that, I need to go on touchables. And also, you can see the warnings at the bottom. If you look at this, it says warning, each child in a list should have a unique key. So this is because I'm rendering a list here and I'm not passing the key prop. So you get the same error on web development as well. If you don't pass a key prop when you are mapping over something, React would throw an error saying that you need to add a key to optimize the way how it is supposed to work. So yeah, so regarding touchables, so you can see that the card design has something a teal kind of border. So that indicates that, okay, these are the components which can be touched. And also on the bottom navigation, you can see a maroon kind of border uh, which says that okay, these are the touchable components. So that means if I touch on that, it will go to a new screen where again it shows what are all the other touchable components, and those will be highlighted. Like here, the back arrow is highlighted with pink because that's an touchable component. So I'll go to the back screen. Okay. So let's see the network tab here. So you can even do the network debugging, like what kind of API requests you are doing, what's the response you're getting. So I go to the network tab. I'll just pull the screen down so that I make an API call. So we can see here what's the URI which is being it and what kind of request it was. So the type, it was an HTTP request, and method was a GET request, and the URL is something like infinite lowlands. So that is where that's where my Node app is running, and it is deployed on Heroku. And I'm asking like, give me the headlines for the country India, and I can also see the request headers which is being sent, and also I can see the response as well. So this is one way of to debug the response. If you want, you can even console log them in your code so that you can see them in your dev console. And yeah, similarly, if you make any multiple API calls, so all those will be listed here, and you can debug on how it's going to, what's the response, or if anything is going on, you can check that. And I'll just reload this app again. So every time you reload, the JavaScript bundle will be downloaded. It just takes a few seconds. Okay. So yeah, so initially in my previous slides, I had mentioned that you can write a code and you can use it on multiple platforms. So I just took this as one of the examples. So have a search screen here. It just has an header, a search input box, and an image. So what I did is I just took the entire React Native code, which is used for this particular screen. So and actually I have a Gatsby website. So actually took the entire code and pasted in one of my pages, and this is the output which I'm getting. So this, and also this is responsive, since each and every element in React Native, they make use of display flex property. By default, all the properties will have flex. So that's why all these components are the web page is responsive as well. And just to look at the code, have this. So in my Gatsby website, I just created a new page named as React Native Components. I just took the entire code that is React, and I'm importing from all this image tag, text, style sheet, input text. I'm importing from React Native. I'm making use of a plugin called as Expo Gatsby plugin, which will take this, run the bundler and get the code which is supposed to run on the web. So even if I inspect this, I can see all divs and images which are as expected. Like, so in my code, I make use of view, image, text components from the React Native. But when it is running on the web, it's going to take those components and bind them to the environment where it's supposed to run. So here it is web, so it is using the div tags in place of all the views, and input tags in place of wherever I need input. So this is about one way of debugging the application. And so we can do remote debugging as well. So let's say one of the options we get is a debug remote.js. So when I click on debug remote.js, it's going to open a new uh, tab, yeah, on my Google Chrome, and I can see all the logs which are which I've logged in my code. So I just logged app loaded. I can see that in my uh, Google Chrome console. So this, you can make use of this tool as well to debug your mobile apps. And so there's also one more tool called as React Dev Tools. So if you want to debug your components, like to see what kind of prop is being passed, what is the state of that component, you can also make use of React Dev Tools. So this you can even debug the React Native mobile applications. And I mentioned that for my application, the one which I recently built, I made use of Expo SDK. So one advantage with Expo is that it provides so many things out of the box. You don't have to spend more time on setting up the APIs which are required. Like for example, my application makes use of push notifications, Google authentication, and few other things. So to build that from the scratch or just with the help of plain React Native, it would have taken more time for me to do those setup and build those components. But what Expo does is it provides a neat APIs, a simple APIs where you can just install them and start building them. And this is one of the app built by a developer from Expo community. It's called as ER Cutbase. So what he actually does is, and this he has built using Expo SDK. So it, from an image, from a camera, it just picks an object and pastes it on his laptop. So this is pretty cool. It's not that Expo with a React and Expo you can pretty much do anything. It's not that you're restricted to do with text and images. You can pretty much build anything. So that's the power of Expo and React Native and Expo. So yeah, with this, I would like to end my talk. So if you have any question, you can ask me.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi, yeah, sorry, yeah, thanks. Sagar, yeah, really nice talk. Now, I have one question about Expo. So I've been using React Native in one of my projects. One real big problem that I face is with auth logins into Facebook and Google and all. So have you tried that, and how has that worked for you? Like any social auth on Expo?
Sure, let me show that to you. I have my application on Play Store and it makes use of Google Auth. So just to keep it simple, I went with the Google Auth. Yeah, we have pretty much integration with some 12 different vendors. Like you can log in with Twitter, Reddit, any other things. So I'll just show you how I built a Google login. So this is my production app, the Outshorts. So it just shows a splash screen. Let me log out. So yeah, I just started a button, Google sign in with Google. Just on click of that, it's going to open a web view of where I can just select which account through which account I can log in. I would just select my account and I'll be automatically logged in. And also I'll be getting all the details of that user, like what's the username, what's their profile picture and the image would look at, and just I'm displaying it in the profile tab. And yeah, what I just showed something with a web view, like not exactly a web view, kind of a behavior is there. But in the latest version of Expo, they've actually released a native behavior also. Like if you click on Google, sign in with Google, you would get a small pop-up where you can just provide your account name, and that's how you will be logged in. So I think the integration with auth is very simple if we go with React Native and the Expo.
Okay. And is there any issue with upgrading to the latest version of the SDK with Expo? I think I faced that also.
Yes. Even I've been facing that. So I built this app some 3 weeks back, and I was actually trying to run the Google login locally today morning, and it was telling that okay, your SDK package version is already deprecated. You have to use the new one. So I think the Expo team releases the new SDK every quarterly. So I think we come across this situations where we need to keep upgrading our packages, and also we need to refactor some of the code to support the new APIs.
Okay. Yeah, because that's one problem that I face, that I have to keep upgrading my Expo SDK every time.
Right.
But yeah, maybe I should do that, and then I'll be in sync with their requirements. Yeah. Thanks for the talk.
Yeah, thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Hi, Sagar.
Hi.
Great talk. Just we wanted to know, like I read some article, like now we can have same code for React Web and React Native also. We can have a same code base and we can deploy it to web and code. So can you share your thought?
Sure. So actually in my presentation, in this page, I'll share this link. So at the bottom, somewhere in the links, I've mentioned that like there's a person named Hivan. He's from the Expo team. So we'll be actually demoing how to build an app for 6 platforms at the same time. I'll paste this link on the chat so that you can refer this YouTube video. Yes, it is with the help of React Native, right? So we'll be building it's just about the adding the bundler or the compiler. So you can write your code in React Native based on the platform where you're supposed to run. You would make use of that bundler or compiler, and you say that, okay, this kind of components from React Native should bind to that particular native element on that particular platform. And that's how, with the help of React Native, they can build application for various platforms. Let me put this link in chat.
And does big organization use React Native, or do they go for native development for Android and iOS?
It depends on the use case. As I said, it's not that Android can do something with Java or Kotlin. We can do something which is not completely possible in React Native. It is possible, but it just takes some time. So let's say if tomorrow Google or Apple releases a new API to their phone, something like getting the room temperature just by where your phone is kept, you may not get those kind of APIs immediately on React Native. It will just take some time to come to the React Native, but those APIs will be provided directly to the Java and the Objective-C, those platforms, through to those SDKs. So it just takes some time to come to the React Native, because it's a community, it's an open source, and someone from the community needs to build a component or an API to work with that native API in an easy way.
Okay, thank you.
Hi Sagar, Shubham here.
Hi, Shubham.
Yeah, great talk. So I would just want to ask, like, will there be any difference in performance as compared to the native application?
I think there was few performance issues previously, but I think React Native recently, not recently, maybe some time back, they started using a JavaScript engine for React Native. They named it as Hermes. I think with that I think with this, there's no much performance issues. So the behavior and the look and feel going to be almost similar to how the native application is going to work.
Okay. And have you tried out Flutter?
No.
Is there like is it similar to what React Native is? Is there any performance?
Yeah. So just
switch to Flutter.
okay. So just an eye level, yeah, I've seen other Flutter developers have developed some apps. So I felt the UI animations, something to do with UI toolkit's very pretty cool. Just that it's on a different programming language, so I need to learn Dart to start with the Flutter. So that's it would take its own learning curve, and that's the reason I didn't pick Flutter. But yeah, definitely, Flutter will also be a good framework to build native applications.
I haven't gave it a try, but I have heard that Dart is like pretty similar to like JavaScript. Like the syntax is like similar to JS.
Okay, probably, yeah, even I need to check it out. I've seen the Dart programming. I didn't feel like it's very much similar to how the React works, like functional components or with managing the states, context API, lifecycle methods. I don't think these are present there, but yeah, I need to still check it out, how that works.
Hi, Sagar.
Hi.
Yeah. Santosh here. Just a quick question.
Yeah, Santosh.
Yeah. So probably somebody might have already asked this, but I joined just now, so just wanted to clear this thing. So I was exploring Flutter a few days ago because somebody told me that Flutter is very much updated with the plugins and APIs and everything, while in React Native there is a lot of problems in updating the plugins and everything, and it is still somewhat painful as compared to the Flutter, and Flutter is seen as more sort of a clean, etc. So I heard you telling that you have not explored Flutter yet. You are yet to learn Dart. So I too have not. Okay. So the thing is, what do you think? So React Native, you can write it once and deploy it everywhere, or is it like you had to write a separate code for iOS and then for Android and then for Windows Phone?
Okay, so yeah, to answer the first question, yeah, the API, some of the APIs on Flutter will be easy to use, and they provide the latest API. The reason being, the Flutter is backed by Google, so those guys have built the Flutter SDK. And also the Google, what they do, if they're releasing some APIs for their Android, they make sure that they release it for Flutter also, because they are maintaining these two frameworks. So that's the reason why Flutter may provide some of the APIs much earlier compared to what we get in React Native. In React Native, we may get little late. And for the second question, yes, with a React Native code, you can just write a React Native code and you can execute that on any kind of environment platform we are supposed to run. So as I mentioned, like it will take the React code. So we pass it to the bundler or a compiler. It binds those native elements to the platform specific native elements. And that's how we generate the app APK for Android devices and web JS bundles for the web browsers. And they can make use of Electron package to generate the Electron code, and you can just have a one code base and run it on various platforms. You don't have to write a separate set of code for different platforms.
Okay, perfect. That sounds great, Sagar. Thank you so much.
Hi, Sagar. This is Shyam. I have a query regarding a canvas. Like, can we use something related to canvas in React Native?
Something related to canvas in React Native. I need to check it out. So actually, you can just React Native as a React Native directory. So it will tell what all APIs it provides. Something if you want to do something with augmented reality, virtual reality, or some APIs, I think you can just check this directory before starting your project so that you get an idea, can this be built using React Native? If not, I think there'll be some developers working on building that kind of package, and that can be added to React Native.
Okay. Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay. So I've seen applications where you can make use of WebGL within React Native applications apps.
Right.
Hi, Sagar.
Hi, Sagar. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm like, I could connect with you very much because I am also not into mobile development, but I started exploring more and I started building an application and it's almost production ready. And I'm a little confused with the configurations because I have different configuration for production and different configuration for development because it connects to different server and database settings and all those things. Did you did you had a similar experience before you moved your application to production? How did you handle that?
Okay, so yeah, I'm just maintaining a config file to get all the configurations which are required to the application. So I'm not adding any configuration API keys within my code itself. I'm just making a separate config file. So based on the target where I want to run, so if I'm supposed to run on developer environment, I just include that config. And if I'm doing a production build to deploy it on Play Store or somewhere, then I just change the config. That's it. So by this, I don't have to replace the config keys or API keys in my application code.
Okay, so your like info list or Gradle files pick the values from that config file?
Actually, for my development purpose, I made use of Expo, so I won't be having access to Gradle or other things. So I just maintain a simple JavaScript file. You can just have a kind of a maintenance JS file or a config file, or you can even just keep a copy in your local environment, and based on when you're running, you can just say import that, and from that config you can import and execute.
Okay, thanks.